Shalom Aleichem, my dear brothers and sisters. In this video, I would like to discuss with you why are Jews rich? And the reason I've chosen this topic is because on several occasions, some of my subscribers actually asked me that question. Why are Jews so successful and so rich? And in fact, one time something funny actually happened. Somebody asked me, one of my subscribers asked me for like a private conversation, and I gave him my contact, and he messaged me, and I was expecting like a religious question, something about the Torah, but he actually said, I just want to know exactly what I need to do to become successful like the Jews. This was actually funny for me, but this was the question. So this was not just one incident, several incidents I have among my subscribers actually asking that question, and I would like to, explain. And first, I want to say that there's some truth to this, that there's some success among the Jews. And just based from experience, from like my observations, I see Jews coming to a new country, for example, as immigrants, and after several years, you see them becoming, successful to a degree. And it seems like this is happening more than among any other population. And the question is why? And first, I want to say it's not because the Jews are smart or anything like that. The fact that Jews, let's say, have Nobel prizes, there's a big percentage of Jews, I think like 20-something%, even though Jewish population is very small in the world, and they have 20% have like Nobel prizes. This you can say maybe it's because the Jews are smart, maybe. But when it comes to wealth, we believe that wealth has nothing to do with person's, how smart he is, or even how much effort he puts into the wealth to become wealthy. It has nothing to do with that. And so the question still stands: what exactly causes the Jews to become successful? And it's not really because of Jews being smart or anything like that. That's what, by the way, South Korea, I think, thought. I don't know if several years ago, the South Koreans. This was actually all over the media, at least Israeli media, I'm not sure, that South Koreans started brainstorming of, how to become more successful as a country. And they decided that, statistically, the Jews seem to be, more successful, and they've decided that this probably has to do with the Talmud that they're learning. This is what and at one time, I'm not sure if this still exists, but at one time the South Koreans instituted the learning of the Talmud into their high school curriculum. And the South Korean ambassador was actually talking about this, that he has two sets of the Talmud in his house, and this became popular in South Korea, and all because that they've decided that this is the secret to the Jewish wealth. But in reality, this is not it. I don't think it's the Talmud, and I don't think it's Jews being smart. The secret is found actually in Tanakh, and this is the book of Malachi. The book of Malachi, chapter 3, verse 10. And this verse actually tells us the secret of how to become wealthy and successful. And here's what the verse says: "Bring all the tithes into the storage house, and let it be sustenance in my temple. Test me, if you will, with this, says Hashem, Master of legions. See if I do not open up for you the windows of the heavens, and pour out upon you blessing without end." So this verse is basically telling us that God is telling us, test me. Bring tithes. Tithes is like charity into my house, and test me to see if I'm not going to open for you the windows of heaven without end. Whenever the Jewish sources talk about windows of heaven, they're talking about wealth, like livelihood. Now, normally we have a rule in Judaism that we are not allowed to test God. For example, a person is not allowed to say to God, "God, I'm going to observe the Sabbath from now on, and I want to see how you're going to heal me," for example, from some illness. You're not allowed to test God. The only thing you're allowed to test God at is this verse. This verse explicitly says to us that God tells us, test me. You can test me. And what's the test? You give charity and I will pour upon you blessings of wealth. And this is the secret that I think that Jews have been using. And the truth is that Jews give charity. And this is, I think, a known thing. And actually, at least among themselves, this is very, I think, well established and very common for Jews to give charity. And in fact, I remember, when we just came to the United States from the former Soviet Union, and we came, obviously, coming out of Soviet Union, you lose everything. They take away all your wealth and everything. They give you, I think it was like $700 or something. That's it. Among everything you own, you can take $700 with you if you leave the Soviet Union. And I remember that when we came, just to the United States, and somehow, the local Jews, the American Jews, found out about us. And, I remember that, for example, every Friday we would open up the door, in the morning, and we would see like a whole basket of food, different food. Somebody would leave at the door, and they would not even be there. They would just leave, knock, I think, and somehow run away. Because they found out that the Jews from Russia came, and they wanted to help, and help anonymously, meaning, not to get any credit. And this was actually, for us, it was touching to see how our brothers, act with us. And not only that, if you look at organizations themselves, Jews coming out from Russia, there were whole institutions set up by American Jews that would help pay for the apartments for the next few months, to the Jews of the former Soviet Union. They would set up kids into schools, private schools. When we just came to the United States, we were going to schools for free. To private Jewish schools, education was for free. The American Jews were supporting those institutions. And so this is, well established. And, this is something I'm happy when I see that the Jews are doing charity. And in fact, I'll tell you something interesting. I'll tell you my first experience living in Israel, which was also very inspirational to me. My first experience living in Israel in the Jewish religious neighborhood. This was my first time living like in a Haredi neighborhood, like ultra Orthodox neighborhood. And just living there and, was an inspiration for me. And I'll give an example that the way they treat each other. And, when we just came there, first of all, the first thing I remember that surprised me is that, when we just settled there, I saw a sign. Somebody posted a sign like on a bulletin board. And the sign was, "Who lost money? Please contact me." And there's a phone number. Somebody found money and the person wanted to return the money to whoever lost it. And, fulfilling the mitzvah of called Shabbat Avedah, returning a lost object. So for me, this was, very surprising, such honesty among people. And then, so we started living in Jerusalem, in the religious neighborhood. I lived there for 2 years, by the way. And I was there temporarily, just, learning in the yeshiva. Right when I got married, and something interesting. We were changing an apartment. I was moving to a different apartment, and this new apartment, I remember, didn't have a washing machine. And I'm thinking, like, what should I do? Because I know that I'm there temporarily, and I didn't want to buy a new washing machine, because they were expensive. They are still expensive, probably in Israel. So I was asking around if somebody knows anybody selling a used washing machine. So as I'm asking one person, this question, if like a friend of mine in the yeshiva, somebody walking by and overheard the conversation and goes into the middle of the conversation and tells me, "Oh, if you need to wash clothing, come to my house." He offered me to come to his house to wash clothing so that I don't have to buy a washing machine. And I told him, no, thank you. I was shy, kind of to accept these things. So I said, no, thank you. That's fine. I will find one. So then eventually Then I think this was like the next day I went to the morning prayer to the synagogue, and there was a neighbor of mine who I already talked to a little bit. I already knew him, and so I asked him the same question: if he knows anybody who's selling a used washing machine, please let me know. I need to buy one. And he says, okay, I'll find out if I hear anything, I'll let you know. And then from this morning prayer, I went to the yeshiva. I was learning in the yeshiva pretty much all day. And then in the evening, I'm coming back from the yeshiva home. And I go home, and my wife tells me that apparently this neighbor that I asked in the morning, he actually sent his daughter to come, take all our clothing, like the dirty clothing, wash it at home in their washing machine, dry it, put it neatly, and she brought everything back. And when I heard this, to me this was very touching. Such a relationship we had among the religious Jews in this neighborhood. And then, by the way, this same neighbor eventually found his relative, I think his niece or his nephew, I don't remember exactly, but somebody was selling a washing machine. And he gave me the phone number and the address where to go. So I called up. And at that time, I didn't really speak Hebrew. I spoke very little bit, just minimal. So I found out the phone number, and I go to that. I called up that person who's selling the washing machine, and I met him. And in Israel, I didn't have a car or anything, so I went on the bus. And then taking the washing machine back, I was hoping to put it. They have special taxis over there with like luggage on the roof where you can load stuff on the roof. So anyways. And it's a small washing machine, so it's not like a huge one that's, So anyway, so I came to the address, I met the person. Yeah, he's really selling the washing machine, very good price. And, I paid him the amount he was asking for. And then he's asking, how are you going to, take it home? I said, I'm going to call a taxi. So then he goes into the room, then comes out, him and his wife. And he says, here's 50 shekels back for you for the taxi. And I told him, no, I'm sorry, I don't need the 50 shekels. This is my business, my problem how to take it back. I bought it from you, I paid for you. I'm going to take it back. Please don't pay me for anything for the taxi. He says, no, you have to take it. I said, no. So I'm refusing to take it. Then his wife starts already, screaming on me, you have to take it, like pressure. And basically they forced this 50 shekels back into my pocket for the taxi. and he sees that my Hebrew is broken Hebrew, so he calls up the taxi himself, to make sure that they are honest and don't overcharge me or anything. So he calls up the taxi, and the taxi pulls up, and three of us. It's not that heavy. It's not like those American washing machines. It's like smaller. So three of us are able to load it up on top on the roof, and we're driving back with the taxi driver, just me and the taxi driver. So now we're driving back, and the taxi says, "Okay, how are we gonna unload it? Because there were three of us to load it, but unloading it, two may be a bit too hard." So I said, "Okay, well, let's see." So we drive by. We get already closer to my apartment. And I see some yeshiva guys outside, and I just, rolled out the window and I asked, "Can anybody help us, unload the washing machine?" And a whole car full of people hops in, like three people, I think, in the back. They hop in, and we pull up to my apartment. We unload the washing machine, and I paid the taxi driver, and I paid him also to bring these yeshiva guys back to their yeshiva. So this was my first experience in a religious Jewish neighborhood. And to me, this was really, inspiring just to live there, just to see how people are, treating each other and helping each other. And I think that this is what actually is the secret of Jewish success and wealth, is that Jews treat each other, we help each other. We help each other, and God tells us that if you do this, I'm going to open up my windows of heaven for you. And even it's interesting that even among non-religious Jews, you see this. Although the non-religious Jews, they sometimes get misunderstanding exactly what charity is. Some of the things they donate to, for example, I would not even consider charity from the perspective of the Torah. Certain things are not even charity, but you see them donating stuff. If you notice, next time you go to a hospital, for example, or somewhere, and you'll see the names of the people that donated, many times it's going to be Jewish names there. If you can tell the difference between the names, many times you will see there are going to be Jewish names there. Why? Because the Jews, even the non-religious, are donating. Sometimes they, donate it maybe to the wrong causes. Not always that's they're donating to the correct cause. For example, like high school girls basketball, for example. To me, this is not a charity. This is not a donation. But you see, Jews are trying to donate, and I think that this is the secret, and this is something Jews have been doing. And in fact, I think the Maimonides, the Rambam, says that it's unheard of a Jewish community not having a charity box. It's unheard of among the Jews. If there's a Jewish community, in fact, if you think about it, you don't really see that many, or if any, I'm not even sure, homeless Jews. You don't see really Jews that are really impoverished homeless. Very rarely. And the reason for that, I think, is because the other Jews do not let that happen. If the Jew is, really struggling financially, the other Jews jump in and help out. And that's, something that really is pleasant to know, and and this is something I'm happily admitting, that this is, I think, a good thing that exists in the Jewish community. Even look at Israel. Even though Israel is not a religious country, and a lot of things that they do is against the Torah, but it's interesting that they're accepting Jews. That doesn't matter where from. They're accepting Jews, and they give him the passport right away at the airport, and they help him out for the first, few months before the person settles in. And I haven't really heard of any other country in the world that does that. That helps out their co-religionists to such a great extent. And now, by the way, one more thing I wanted to mention is that the best type of charity is when a person does it anonymously. Meaning, if let's say you have a neighbor or somebody, right, who's struggling, the best way to help him is not to, go and say, here, I'm helping you. The best way to do it is to do it somehow quietly, somehow that he doesn't even find out who gave it to him, if possible. And this way you are doing this, helping him purely for one reason, for God's sake. God knows that's all you should care about. If God knows what you're doing, this is all you should care about. Publicity is not a good thing. And in fact, there's actually a story that there was once a town that there was a rich Jew, and people didn't see him give any charities or anything, and people thought of him as being cheap and greedy, because he doesn't give charity or anything, and eventually one time when he was already old, he was ordering his casket for himself, and he was bargaining with the casket dealer on the price of the casket. And the casket dealer was surprised. This guy is so greedy that he's even bargaining on his own casket. What's he gonna do with that money? And then eventually this rich guy passed away, died, and suddenly the town, this Jewish town, noticed that the poor people have nothing to eat. And they started researching, what's going on? And they started asking, where did you, before now, where did you get your money? How come right now you don't have that source of income anymore? So the poor people would point to somebody, to some store owner. Then store owner would point to somebody else. And eventually they found out that this rich guy was the one who was supporting all the poor people. And he was just doing it quietly, and nobody knew about it. but he was the one who was supporting all the poor people. And when he was bargaining for his casket, it was because he wanted to save more money for the poor after he dies. So whatever he has left, he would, could distribute the rest of his money. So this is the best type of charity, is when a person does it quietly. Thank you for watching.